Scott, I want to ask you about a Washington Post report that progress is being made in the new CBA, that we could be moving toward a 17-game regular season and potentially adding 2 more playoff teams as well. What do you know about that?
Well, I don't know what I know other than what that's new or to add, because they're being very tight-lipped with this information. But I think we all do see the 17th game coming down the road at some point in time. And I think that the addition of 2 new playoff teams, again, both of these moves come down to one thing and one thing only, and that's revenue for the league. And the league likes that, the owners like that, and truthfully, to some degree, players in the players' union like that as well. So once there's more revenue, there's more to be split with the players. But one of the things that's always concerned me about this is adding another game of so many hits on so many players and so many more opportunities of risk. And a 17th game is really going to add to that, not only to state that the playoffs are going to go longer, so the whole season is going to go longer. And, Brady, I'd like to throw it out to you. You're the only former player amongst this group, and my biggest concern is player safety. Am I overthinking this, Brady? Is the league overthinking this? Is the addition of one more game truly an issue?
I don't necessarily think it's an issue if you check a few boxes off, and that starts off with obviously providing potentially another bye. A second bye in there would make a lot of sense. It may push back the NFL season, but we've talked about it before. President's Day would actually be a good time for the Super Bowl.
They've eyed that for a long time.
We've talked about it for a long time. So I believe if there's an additional bye, that would be one way in which it'd work. If they do get a greater share of the overall revenue share, because we lost out on that in the last CBA agreement, that'd be, I think, another thing. If it could go for some post-career player benefits, that'd be a part of it. But, Scott, I kind of want to turn it back on you only because, the coaches and the front office executives a lot of times are in the middle of all this between the players and the owners. And I guess I look at it and say, why have they not, instead of putting a limit on their game day roster, why have they not made all 53 men that are on the active roster, why aren't they available on game day? Because if that was the case, I also feel like it would take away from some of the concern about player safety, having the additional bodies that are all up and available if healthy.
Brady, that's a great question. It's a question that I've asked at the annual meetings a number of times, and I've asked in private. And to me, I've never heard a really good reason that makes me feel comfortable, or really that makes me feel satisfied with what the answer is. I agree that if you're going to have a 53-player roster and you're going to have 53 players that you're paying, whoever is on the roster, whoever is getting paid, have them available to a coach. And I think some people believe that the closest thing to an answer that I've heard is there's always going to be players hurt, and this helps the competitive advantage to not become a competitive disadvantage, that if Team X has 4 players injured and Team Y has no players injured, this gives an opportunity for there to be balance, that someone won't be without more players than the other team. And again, I don't agree with that thought process, but Brady, it's funny and it's interesting. You're right. You talk about coaches and front office people and GMs and personnel directors sometimes being caught in the middle. And I think what players forget sometimes about GMs and coaches, and something that GMs and coaches forget sometimes, we're all hired help and we're all working for owners.
At some point, this is going to get done. It's going to 17 weeks. We're going to eliminate 2 preseason games. There's going to be bigger rosters, like you said. There's going to be more jobs for the players, so they'll sign off on it. They'll give them the chance to smoke pot whenever they want to. That's going to go in as well. I'm telling you, it's going to be part of it. Marijuana is going to be part of this.
It'll be readily available in the locker room.
Well,
it's
going to be
70s. What's going on?
I'm telling you, it's happening.
Just reach on in and
more playoff games. You know why? Because in the end, what's ultimately, and Scott talked about this the other day when we were talking about what ultimately decides everything. Money. And everybody's going to make money. The networks will get more games, which they want. They'll get more playoff games. The players will get more jobs, and we'll see more football.
I'm going to have Scott weigh in on this. Scott, was there just going to be like marijuana permeating through facilities now? I mean, come on, man. That ain't happening. There's no way that's
They're not going to give
case.
it to them, but they're not going to test for it anymore like the NBA.
Jeez.
I don't know what to say to that, because there's arguments in both directions. I usually sound like the grumpy old man, get off my lawn. I had one of my buddies who's about the same age as me talking about it. He said to me, "There's a reason they call it dope, you know, and we can't have these guys smoking it." So it'll be fascinating to see what comes of it. Pete, I'm glad you brought that point up. We needed a little levity after talking about Colin.
Scott Pioli, thank you so much. And don't worry about being the get off your lawn guy. We already have
That's
one of
me.
those. That's Pete Briscoe. So you can play your own role. Thank you so much for joining us here on HQ.